Good morning, my name is Ryan Freeman. Welcome to my life and welcome to a book review of Chrome Yellow in the Park. I just finished this book this morning. The title is Chrome Yellow and the author's name is Aldous Huxley. Now, this was Aldous Huxley's first book. This was the book that took the world by storm, that let the world know that there was a new author on the stage, an author that would strike back at the extreme rationalism, the extreme overconfidence in the modern way of life, and show the absurdities of so many of the modern things that we take for granted. Now, I'm not nearly as eloquent. I am not a wordsmith like Aldous Huxley. If there is one way to describe him, it's not only as a polymath, someone who has an expertise on a variety of different branches of knowledge, but also as a wordsmith. And reading Aldous Huxley in general, I've read a handful of his books. It's a delight because he talks about some of the peculiar and funny aspects of our society in a very funny way. So he's able to actually show us some of our absurdities in our contemporary life, but he does it with humor and panache and beauty. But he also uses so many words that I'm unfamiliar with. So if you're like me, I didn't pay attention when I was in school. I didn't really work that hard. I just sort of like breezed through. And I found that I became an adult and with a very poor education. So in my adulthood, I've had to educate myself. And one of the things that I've learned is I actually don't know that many English words, that my very language. There's so many beautiful expressions, beautiful words. And I use a lot of the words the same, beautiful, a little too many times right there. Aldous Huxley introduces me to so many words I've never even heard before. I think that's one of the reasons, and he doesn't use it flippantly. I mean, every expression, every phrase is perfectly situated within the context of what he's talking about. And I just find reading Aldous Huxley in general to be a joy. Just a quick, I don't know everything about his history, but from what I do know is he went to Oxbridge. I'm not sure if it was Oxford or Cambridge. He was at the top of his class. Maybe it was Trinity College. I'm not exactly sure. I believe he studied English literature, and he was the brightest pupil, of course, of one of the brightest universities. And his distinguished professor said, "You should be a professor of English literature." And he said, "But sir, to study English is absurd. It's to enjoy." And for me, I think all of the geniuses, whatever the field is, what I find remarkable about them isn't that they embark down their course because it was a bright future for their career or it was useful or pragmatic. No, they were geniuses because they launched into whatever subject they were specialized in from their joy, from their pleasure. And when you read Chrome Yellow, the pleasure that Aldous Huxley has for life, even in criticizing it, he's a social critic in many ways, and we think of criticism as sort of negative, but criticism is its own art. And if there's one expert at that, I would say it's Aldous Huxley. And everything that he does criticize our modern culture is very poignant and very clear, but also not harsh. It's beautiful. And I should say that this was written 100 years ago. I believe it was published in 1922. So many things are a little dated. The costumes, this takes place around that time, 1920, in England. It takes place in the countryside. Crome is the name of this manor house where some gentlemen and some ladies congregate for a summer of socializing and discussions and nice country living in England around that time. But all the criticisms and all the characters and the archetypes you will recognize. There's a handful of characters that are described in very clear detail in the beginning of the book, and then as the story takes place, and it's a pretty short book, these characters come to life, and each one of them is is so funny and so ridiculous and so absurd, and so easily identifiable with. So as I was reading this book, and I was like, oh, this person's ridiculous, this person's ridiculous. But then as I started to really listen to what these characters were saying and what they were doing, I noticed aspects of myself and my own personality in every single one of them. So this book helped me to look at the absurdities within my own character. You know, there's a character, I'm not going to spoil, I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens, and do forgive me about the ambient noise. There's a gardener trucking past, but this park is the common area. Back to the book. So, you know, I think personal confession, one of my biggest sins in life is sometimes I take life too seriously, and I take myself seriously. And it's just, you know, taking life seriously is, of course, you know, it does bring a certain fervor to living, but it's only really when we can laugh at ourselves that I really feel the most human and the most relieved, and all of my tension has gone away. So Chrome Yellow helped me in that. Chrome Yellow, by introducing all of these characters, and each one of these characters had an absurd part of their personality that I could identify in myself, almost like looking at a mirror with these various shades of personality. It helped me laugh at myself. And every time I can laugh at myself and go, Ryan, you're ridiculous, or life is ridiculous, it relieved me. And I found myself, I usually read out in the front yard and watch the neighbors pass by and wave at the people walking their dogs, and I just found myself laughing so loud that I was almost embarrassed, because we laugh loudest when we laugh at ourselves, really, and then we become human. That's my own 2 cents. And of course, life, you could look at it seriously as well, and there's plenty of ways that you can reflect on this book and think of, you know, our modern civilization, and, you know, you can have different feelings and emotions as you read through it. But overall, it's a fantastic way to sort of penetrate into human personality and look at its more humorous aspects. So there's a character, Mr. Barbecue Smith, who's very spiritual, and he's all about tapping into the subconscious mind and letting the glorious, transcendent powers filter through him as a vessel. And it's funny, like, I've really gone down a path in my philosophy and my understanding of the world and psychology, which led me to believe that, you know, as well. And maybe it's true, but it's just funny because Mr. Barbecue Smith, who's this ridiculous character that Aldous Huxley is obviously skewering with comedy, I realize how ridiculous I've been in my life. But there's another character, Dennis, who's the main character, and he is this young poet, and he overthinks things. He's too self-conscious, and I find I identified a lot with Dennis. And there's a couple artists, and there's the great lover boy Ivor, and I found myself in almost every character, and I think you will too, because human personality, when you really get into it and when you really reflect on your life, is so multifaceted, is so it's like the weather, you know, the leaves are falling down, but in a few months this background will look different, and in a few months after that the background will look different as well. And I myself obviously have gone through many changes in my life. I'm a different man than I was 10 years ago. Similar, but different. But even within a day itself, you know, my mood is different in the morning than it is in the evening. So that was a bit of a digression. But to bring it back to the book is that each one of these characters represents a part of the human slice of life and the human prism of looking at this world. You know, some of the characters are stuck in the past. Some of the characters are all about embracing the passion. Some of the characters live coolly and rationally in the head. Some characters are very self-conscious. Some are less self-conscious. Some are, they all have different values. And I found myself loving every single character despite their absurdities. And perhaps I loved them because I identified with all of them, right? That is empathy, right? The idea of empathy is that I see a little bit of me in you, right? So now I have this attachment to you. That was the description I got from one of the psychologists. And so I had empathy for all of these characters, and they went through tragedies, like, spurned love, that is the quintessential romantic tragedy, right? Where you love someone who doesn't return that love, and we all experience that at some point of our life, or love that gets broken up, or miscommunications, or fear and fright at the immensity of the cosmos. All of these themes are within Chrome Yellow. And so that's what it is in a nutshell. I'm not going to tell you the specifics of the story because I want you to read it. This is a fantastic short book. I got it for $1. I got it for $1 to use the book sale. I'm always on the lookout for Aldous Huxley books just because every single one of them is amazing. And I found a couple other ones at this book sale that I'm going to read, and I'll bring the reports back to you. Is just a handful of very vivid, clear, absurd yet funny and interesting characters that I think you'll be able to identify. Maybe even not in yourself, but you'll at least identify in other people. I mean, there's a reason that stories become popular and authors become popular is because they nail the archetypes, but they don't just do them in cliche portrayals. They actually give them depth and color and beauty and vividness that makes it recognizable but also unique and fun. And so Aldous Huxley brings these characters that you will be familiar with. Perhaps you won't be familiar with the setting. It's a country manor in the countryside of England, there's reminiscing of the past, and there's talk of some of the British games that were popular 100 years ago, some of the fashions. And like I said, Aldous Huxley has a very advanced vocabulary. So there were days when I was reading and I was like, I don't want to look up every word. I just want to enjoy. So I just read, and if I had a word that I didn't understand, I just, whatever. I tried to guess at what it was. But most of the time, I had a dictionary right next to me, usually my phone, and would look up the words and listen to the pronunciation, because it's fun. It's fun to learn new words. And there's even a section for anyone out there that does love the English language. There's even a section where they talk about what makes a literary mind, and it is the love of language, the joy of a new word. And he has fun with that section. It's not so serious. I mean, I think, okay, this is me being serious, but life is best when it's enjoyed with the joy of a child, with the joy of innocence and the purity of love. And Aldous Huxley brings that to us. It's his Chrome Yellow, instantly hailed as the finished work of a master. And so this was Aldous Huxley's first book. I hope you pick it up. If you do, or if you know anything about Aldous Huxley, or if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer you down in the comments. I'll bring you more book reports soon. I love reading books. I hope you do too. And I will see you. Oh, last on reading, the joy of reading books, there's a character who wishes, because I do love reading books, right? But what about the joy of putting the book down and embracing just life? Not the finished, not life in pages, right? There's a section that deals with that. So I think you'll find that to be a very remarkable passage to contemplate and to laugh at as well. Okay, my name's Ryan Freeman. See you guys. Enjoy your fall. Bye.